Good evening and a warm welcome to all. I am Ridil Mishra from the corporate communication team, and on behalf of Care Ratings, welcome you to our today's discussion on microfinance industry. We sincerely appreciate your time in joining us for this webinar. Our esteemed guest speakers for today are Mr. Arup Kumar, Vertical Head, SIDBI Foundation of Microcredit. Mr. Devesh Sasdev, Founder and CEO, Fusion Microfinance Limited, will be joining us soon. And Mr. Nitin Chugh, MD and CEO, Ujjivan Small Finance Bank Limited. Dear sirs, thank you and welcome. The session will be moderated by Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, Senior Director at Care Ratings. Dear participants, will commence the session with the presentation by Ravi Shankar. Ravi is Assistant Director at Care Ratings and is a Group Head for BFSI Ratings and based out of our Chennai office. The presentation will be followed by a panel discussion. We'll be having a Q&A session with the audience at the end of the discussion. In case of any queries, you're please requested to type in your questions. Now may I invite Ravi to begin with this presentation, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mridul. Let us move on to the presentation now. Impact of COVID-19 second wave on the recovery of MFI sector. First, let us look at the major takeaways from the presentation. Next slide. During the period from FY17 to FY20, the microfinance industry grew at a CAGR of around 30%. This is reduced to 8% in FY21.
Mridul, you need to come back, Mridul. The slides are changed. Before that.
Sorry.
Yeah. During the same period, the share of universal banks in microfinance industry increased from 31% as on March 31, 2017 to 44% as on March 31, 2021 due to acquisition of an NBFC MFI by a bank and SFB's focus on non-microfinance products. Number of crises witnessed by the industry, namely AP crisis, demonetization, and Assam crisis, have resulted in new regulations such as creation of new category of NBFC, that is NBFC MFI category, with separate set of regulation post AP crisis, and also this RBI consultation paper on microfinance post Assam crisis. The last decade has witnessed NBFC MFIs reporting stable NIM and improvement in OPEX thanks to the improving scale of operations. However, credit cost and ROTA were conditioned by the event risk during the period. COVID-19 resulted in increase in credit cost in FY21, and with second wave, credit cost likely to remain at higher levels in FY22. We will discuss the above takeaways in detail in the following slides. Industry summary. In this section, we will give summary of microfinance industry. Microfinance sector in India. Microfinance in India plays an important role in delivering credit to the people at the bottom of the economic pyramid. The essential features of microfinance loans are that they are of small amounts with shorter tenures, extended without collateral, and the frequency of loan repayments is greater than that of the traditional commercial loans. Total microfinance loans outstanding in India stands at around 2.5 lakh crore as on March 31, 2021, with around 200 lenders involved in the same. Microfinance loans witnessed CAGR of 25% during the period from FY17 to FY21, with lowest year-on-year growth of 8% being observed in FY21. Major players in the sector are NBFC MFIs, universal banks, and small finance banks. Each of them was having a share of around 30% of the industry in FY17. However, over the years, the share of universal banks has increased with acquisition of Bharat Financial Inclusion by a universal bank in FY20, and the share of universal banks in microfinance industry stood at 44% as on March 31, 2021. During the period from FY17 to 21, while the share of NBFC MFIs have witnessed slight increase from 30 to 32%, SFBs witnessed sharp decline in their industry share as they have started focusing more on non-microfinance product and on the liability side of their business. Next slide. Growth rate of NBFC MFIs. Post demonetization, the growth rates were high for the microfinance loans, especially for NBFC MFIs. However, the growth rates declined in FY20 and 21 due to COVID-19 breakout, and banks started gaining share during this period. In respect of select NBFC MFIs, loan portfolio increased from 3,000 crore as on March 31, 2014 to 53,000 crore as on March 31, 2021 at a CAGR of around 52% over the 7-year period. Event risk of the past. Historically, microfinance loans of lenders exhibit good asset quality with high collection efficiency and low delinquency levels in the absence of event risk. But any event risk in the MFI sector hits the players hard and takes away the profit of past 1 to 3 years. In this section, we will discuss the major events witnessed by the sector. Major crisis of the past and its impact on the sector. AP crisis. AP crisis erupted in 2010 is one of the deepest crises which has hit the microfinance sector so far. The crisis can be attributed to over-indebtedness of the borrower, lack of control of lending process of MFIs, coercive collections, and significant intervention by local authorities hampering the collections. This crisis resulted in ultimate loss of rupees 7,000 crore for AP-based MFIs, and end loss for the MFI industry stood at around 35% in this event, which is one of the highest credit losses so far. Key takeaways from the AP crisis is the lack of discipline on lending by few players, impacting the whole industry, and need for geographical diversification of microfinance lenders to mitigate the event risk to the extent. However, the positive impact of the same was setting up of Malegam committee by RBI to regulate the sector and creation of new category of NBFC, namely NBFC MFI, with set of NBFC MFI specific guidelines. The next event was in FY17, which was triggered by demonetization. It is worthwhile to note that microfinance largely serve rural and semi-urban areas wherein the use of digital mode of payments are limited due to various reasons such as say poor or lack of internet connectivity and low level of literacy among the borrowers. Majority of the microfinance borrowers use cash as the only mode of payment, and this non-availability of cash during the demon period resulted in payment delay by the microfinance borrowers. 180 plus day past due figure after peaking to the level of 6.7% at the end of September 2017 gradually dropped from then. However, credit cost for the industry stood at around 5%, and the extent of impact varied for each player depending on the geography. Key takeaway from this event was enhanced use of digital mode of payments. Many of the lenders have started disbursing directly to the borrower's bank account instead of cash post demon. Incidentally, the demon crisis was a limited period event of about 3 months. However, the impact of which lasted for a much longer time. Liquidity crisis. Liquidity crisis took place in FY18 and it was common across the NBFC sector, whereas the incremental lending to NBFC sector has declined sharply. The same has resulted in MFI players increasing the proportion of their cash holding. Assam crisis. Assam crisis has erupted in September 2019. Various social political issues, including the impact of flood, slowdown in economic activity in tea plantation, and disruptions caused by the protests against Citizenship Amendment Act, have been the reason. One major causes include over-indebtedness of the borrowers and coercive collection. The state government intervened very heavily, leading to significant disruption in collection and asset quality. During this crisis, 1 to 30 DPD, which was around say 2.3% at the end of September 19, has increased to 16% in December 19, as against the overall MFI industry 1 to 30 DPD of 1.9%. So ultimate credit losses on account of Assam event are expected to be at around 20% on the affected portfolio. This compares well with AP crisis losses of about 60% of the local exposure. Major fallout of the Assam event was intervention of the state government with formulation of state-specific regulation in Assam and relief measures to microfinance borrowers by way of incentive waive-off options for the borrowers. The foundation for extant NBFC MFI guidelines were laid in 2010 by Malegam Committee. With the passage of time and learnings, RBI is in the process of overhauling the regulation applicable to microfinance loan. But this time, the proposal is to cover the entire gamut of players who are offering the microfinance loans. Asset quality behavior during AP crisis. As discussed earlier, AP crisis was the deepest with 90 plus DPD of around 58% for AP exposure of MFIs. Asset quality behavior post AP crisis. Post AP crisis with separate NBFC guidelines, the asset quality behavior of NBFC MFIs was characterized by low NPA levels until demon. RBI allowed lenders to offer 3 months of standstill for NPA recognition during the demonetization period, which resulted in the industry reporting lower NPAs as on March 31, 2017. However, the NPA levels increased subsequently. Most of the entities have lost around 1 year's profit during the period of demon. The impact on the asset quality due to demon have been different across different geographies. During the crisis of COVID-19, there is an impact on the asset quality despite extending moratorium to the borrowers for a period of up to 6 months. GNPA stood at 4.7% as on March 31, 2021, as against 2.1% as on March 31, 2020. There has been sharp impact of COVID-19 across the asset classes, and the impact have been higher in the unsecured segment, notwithstanding the various relief measures provided to the borrowers as per the regulatory guidelines. With the outbreak of second wave and uncertainty on the subsequent outbreaks, NPA is expected to remain at the elevated levels during FY22. The extent of increase in NPA also depends on the speed of recovery of business activity of the underlying MFI borrower. Asset qualities of SFB impacted mainly due to microfinance portfolio. Sharp increase in NPA levels was also witnessed in the microfinance based SFBs, wherein the GNPA of select 7 SFB increased to 6.49% as on March 31, 2021. SFBs with no or minimal microfinance portfolio reported better GNPA numbers than the microfinance based SFBs. Impact on the credit cost. First, let us look on the profitability. NIM remained in the range of 9 to 10% since FY14, as the spread is restricted to 10% by the regulator for NBFC MFIs. OPEX has been improving over the years with improvement in scale of operations and attaining economies of scale. OPEX to average assets ratio, which was around 7% in FY14, improved to around 5% in FY21, as we see in the chart on the left. However, higher reduction in OPEX was seen in FY21 as the operations of MFIs was impacted during Q1, which resulted in reduction in administrative expenses. Also, the incentives were lower during FY21 due to reduced level of disbursements. Post demonetization, companies started realizing that the gearing has to be relatively at a lower level in order to mitigate event risk, which has deeper impact on the microfinance lenders. So with the ability of many MFI NBFC to attract equity capital, they raised the equity capital, thereby reducing the gearing levels. Post FY17, gearing levels have been improving, as we see in the chart on the right. During FY19, there has been significant change in gearing levels, and the same resulted in increased NIM. In terms of liquidity, MFI started increasing their cash holding gradually during the period from March 2017 to March 2021. As on March 31, 2021, MFIs continue to hold cash to the extent of 40% of scheduled repayment of the next 1 year. Overall, NIM is expected to remain at around 9% going forward unless gearing of the players undergo major change, and also OPEX is expected to remain in the range of 5 to 5.5% on a steady state basis. OPEX unlikely to witness a major improvement unless the use of technology increases multifold. Let's move on to the credit cost. Generally, the credit cost for the MFIs remain at sub 1% when there is no event risk. However, when there is an event risk, credit cost increases sharply. As we see from the chart above, there has been increase in credit cost for the select NBFC MFIs during FY 17-18 due to demonetization, as given by the green line. The likely credit cost of demonetization was around 5% for most of the industry players. Credit cost in FY20 was higher majorly due to Assam crisis, where there was an impact of around 20% of the portfolio in Assam. Also, credit cost stood elevated in FY21 due to outbreak of COVID-19. During FY21, credit cost stood at around 5% for most of the entities operating in the microfinance space. Improved spread offered by stable NIM and improvement in OPEX over the years is offset by the increase in credit cost of the entity due to various event risks. The credit cost remained lower than the expected level in FY21 due to various measures offered such as moratorium, one-time restructuring, and COVID support loan provided for the existing borrowers. Credit cost is expected to remain elevated in FY22 with the outbreak of second wave and with net NPA which is yet to be provided at the end of FY21. When we look at the ROTA is inversely proportional to the credit cost, as we see in the purple line on the chart. Any event risk impacts the ROTA for 2 to 3 year time period depending on the intensity of the event. In this section, we will look at the key challenges going forward. Spike in overdue post-COVID wave 1. The increase was not only in terms of NPAs, there was also spike in terms of delinquency levels of the microfinance portfolio in MFIs and SFBs. 30 plus DPD increased to almost 9% as on March 31, 2021. This spike in PAR levels was despite the relief measures offered to microfinance borrowers such as moratorium, one-time restructuring, etc. The increased delinquency in softer buckets result in increased slippage due to second wave. The way forward. Credit costs for FY22 expected to be at a higher level than FY21 with the outbreak of COVID-19 second wave. The impact of COVID is expected to be seen in the credit costs over 2 to 3 years, as we have seen during the other crises such as AP crisis and demonetization. Also, the increased delinquencies in the softer buckets as on March 31, 2021 will have an impact due to second wave, which results in increased credit costs for the year. However, the projections do not factor in another wave of COVID impacting the livelihood. Also, the projections does not consider any further support or relief measures from the regulator henceforth. CARE rating dispersion and migration. Out of the CARE rated universe of NBFC MFIs, 9 are in the A category and 10 are in BBB category. The rating movements during FY21 was in line with the industry scenario, where there were 7 downward revisions, with majority of the revisions was on the outlook. Key challenges going forward. State level regulations. Intervention of state government at different point of time impacts the asset quality in the respective case, as in the case of AP crisis and Assam crisis. This is one of the major challenges faced by the industry. Regulations. Change in regulation as proposed in RBI consultation paper, which focuses on pricing of loans and uniformity of regulation among all types of players in the industry. Minimizing the impact of event risk. The industry has been evolving with learnings from each of the event it faced. However, the event risks continue to occur. Lack of funding for small NBFC. Small NBFC MFIs do not get access to various sources of fund, especially during times of event risk, which exposes them to the liquidity risk. And finally, the impact of COVID wave 2. With increase in delinquency post COVID wave 1, the sector has become vulnerable to further event risk. And the second wave of COVID brings further stress to the industry. Various relief measures provided to the borrowers as per the regulations reduced the impact in FY21. However, the impact is expected to be seen over 2 to 3 years as benefits of relief measures extended wanes out and the impact on the repayment ability of the borrowers become visible. Though the results of many entities for June quarter is awaited, the stress on the asset quality is already evident. Also, any further wave of COVID will be a major challenge going forward. Thank you. Over to Mradul.
Yeah, thank you, Ravi. Now, may I invite Mr. Sanjay Agarwal to moderate this session, please? Mr. Sanjay Agarwal is a senior director at CARE Ratings. He has over 23 years of experience in the field of ratings, banking, infra finance, and at CARE Ratings, he heads the BFSI sector. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mridul. Good evening, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us for this webinar. We have 3 guest speakers for the day, all of whom incidentally have a very strong background in banking. So, Mridul, can you start the slides, please?
Yeah.
So we have Mr. Arup Kumar, who is the vertical head of SIDBI Foundation of Microcredit. He has worked with Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited for 7 years, post which he has been with SIDBI for last 27 years. He is a veteran and one of the key pillars of MFI segments. For the last 2 years, he has been working in the microfinance sector, supporting the sector through Credit Plus approach. Next, please. We have Mr. Devesh Sachdeva, who is a first generation entrepreneur who founded and runs Fusion Microfinance. He is the managing director and CEO of Fusion, a company in headlines for the last couple of days. He is a postgraduate from XLR and has over 25 years of experience in BFSI and services sector, having worked in Citibank and BSA Logistics also. Further, for this session, it's very relevant. He is the chairman of MFIN, which is the self-regulatory organization for NBFC MFIs in India. Mr. Nitin Chugh joined Ujjivan SFB in August 2019 as president and took over as bank's MD and CEO from December 1, 2019. Nitin is also a career banker with over 2 decades of experience in retail banking. He has worked with Stancy and HDFC Bank for 27 years. Nitin is best known for his work in digital banking at HDFC Bank, where he oversaw and led the digital transformation of the bank from 2013 to 2019. He holds a Bachelor of Technology degree from National Institute of Technology, Kurukshetra, and completed his MBA from All India Management Association. Friends, now we move to the main session of the day of hearing views of our esteemed guest speakers. To begin with, I would like to point out to speakers and audience that this discussion is on overall industry prospects of microfinance industry and not on any of the individual companies any of the speakers may represent professionally. Hence, none of the views can be construed to be of any assessment of any individual company. So let me first start with Devesh. The analysis put forward by CARE indicates that credit costs are expected to remain elevated during FY22 due to the second wave. We understand that most of the players have experienced high delinquencies in June 2021 quarter. Do you see the impact on asset quality to be higher than the first wave, or would it likely to be much lesser than that?
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay. I think this is directed to me, right?
Yeah, Devesh.
So I think before I start, please excuse me. I want to really, comment on Ravi, which gave a presentation and some of the things which were put up in the presentation. So one, I have a major disconnect on the fact that on the Assam issue, it has been written that it is an issue of over-indebtedness. So let me just, because I have been through MFin dealing with this issue the last 1 year. So let me just share some data with you, give you understanding that it's more of a perception rather than a data. So out of 26,23,000 customers in Assam, 19 lakh customers, which is 72% customers, have only one loan. Then there are close to 19% customer, they have loans from two lenders. And I'm talking about the full universe. Only 2% customers, which is around 60,000 customers, had loan from more than 3 lenders. So let me just put the record straight that there are many times when there are a lot of things are said more because of 1 or 2 issues here. People go and represent to some politician. Suddenly this image is created, but the data, this is a credit bureau data, which even has started some of the players, some of the stakeholders who were actually accusing the sector. So let me just first put this point on the table. So other thing is, I think some data which talked about that 90 plus for the universe. What I have the information from, we come out with this, as MFin come out with this publication, 90 plus is 3.90. I don't know where it was, somewhere I think I saw it was mentioned as more than 5% or something. So that is one more correction. So coming back to Sanjay on this COVID thing. Look, I think one, we all must appreciate that the magnitude of the problem is very big. Also, you have to appreciate, second thing, it is a back-to-back thing. If you look at the COVID-1, and you look at the February-March number, more or less the sector was recovering. But then the COVID-2 happened. It is any such hit, when you look at the bar, the hit is the thinner, but the recovery, it takes some, the bar actually bulges because of the fact that it takes time. But I also want to mention that if you look at all asset class, today also I was reading in the Mint about micro SMA, even there are GNPAs in the range of, especially for public sector banks, there's the data which is there today in Mint. It is between 16 to 26%. So it's not that only microfinance is impacted. if you have also, I also want to point out, which even your presentation was showing some few things were visible. Let me also put one or more things. One was that after every event, the players, the practitioners have really learned and improved and evolved, whether it is digitization. Second was the capital structure. If you see your slides talk about the gearing, the people understand you have to have a moderate gearing. The other point which I also want to highlight is, if you look at the most of the MFI, whatever the data is in the public domain, especially the top 10, 12, 15 companies, the provisioning are already in the range of 4.5 to 9%. So less gearing, provisioning coverage is more aggressive. And third is the capital. I think most of the companies, if you look at the capital adequacy, I don't think there could be one or two outliers, but if you look at top 12, 15 companies, the capital adequacy is also at a very comfortable level. So that's this is another point I wanted to make. So on the impact, look, it's very difficult to compare. I understand that in the COVID-1 there was a moratorium which was given back to back, 3 plus 3 months moratorium, but it took some time. And I'm very sure that, look, we have also done some kind of client surveys, spoken to clients that I'm talking about as a Fusion. And what we understand is, yes, people are in some kind of distress, some economic impact, household income has been impacted. But broadly, there are two big things which are coming out. One, clients also appreciate that they want to keep their credit bureau record clean. So they are saying that we will come back, we will give us some time. Second point, which is also very important, that we all appreciate that in a distress, when you are not able to repay, but that also is a time when you want more liquidity because you want to really come out. So I think the calibrated approach, if the sector is falling, I hope, and most of the players now, RBI regulator has also been very proactive by giving such some means, which is resolution 2.1.0, now 2.0 has given us means to work with the client. If we work with the client, and this all depends on if the COVID-3 does not happen and then no further lockdowns. But I think it's too soon. If you look at, Sanjay, that till June, even there were lockdowns. Even you look at Tamil Nadu, still lockdowns are there in some districts. So I think it's just been one month, 1.5 months of this thing, and then early indicators of the collections are for most of the players is very, very encouraging. So I think if we work closely, have a very calibrated approach, work closely with the clients, you will see that companies coming out of this with as less impact as possible. But it is very difficult to really pinpoint what could be the credit cost at this point of time.
Right, Devesh, I think that's a very important point. So in terms of the views or the reasons for Assam, obviously it had gone a lot political, and hence a lot of words and adjectives were used in various sense of things. So thanks for pointing out whatever you pointed out. I think that was very relevant. And in terms of the companies itself, the way we generally now discuss the NBFC industry is the asset side and the liability side. So while the asset side would have been impacted by the crisis, but last 2.5 years, there's been huge correction in the liability profile, both on terms of the capital itself and in terms of the liquidity that the companies are carrying, which as Ravi had pointed out, is about 40 to 50% of 1 year liability, which is a huge figure considering that MFIs are a small tenure loan industry. And hence we see that despite such a crisis of this magnitude, the industry, one, is able to make some profit even if it's very meager, and two, the financials remain very strong, which is also reflected in our rating action, that while we have this event of a magnitude which probably has never been seen before, most of the rating changes have been in terms of mere outlooks rather than the rating changes itself, which in any other period of time would probably have been significant changes in the rating and our rating transition statistics. So yeah, I think a very interesting point, and I agree with you that today we are at early days, probably to be able to point out the magnitude of credit losses which could happen in FY22. Okay. So coming to Nitin, our question is Devesh touched upon the resolution framework 2.0 of RBI. So do you think that this will help the industry to provide a much needed relief to borrower and enable to reduce the impact on the asset quality?
Yes, absolutely. Because, if you remember the first time around, there was an extended moratorium of 6 months. And after that, there was a restructuring framework that was announced, which we made use of, right? And this time around, because the whole wave was a lot shorter from a time period point of view, even though it was a lot more high amplitude, I think the restructuring framework came in very timely and very handy. And that is what all of us, I think, are working and implementing. From the borrower's point of view, yes, the points that Devesh also made, they need liquidity. They also need help with their repayments in making sure that the repayments get, restructured in a manner that they have the ability to balance both their cash flows as well as the obligations that they have. And at the same time, rebuild their businesses, because when their businesses or their livelihood get impacted, it has to be rebuilt. It's not a start-stop situation for them like the salaried people that you decide to go to work or you don't decide to go to work. So they have to really resurrect themselves. So I think it is indeed helpful, and the contours are also very well defined. And on that basis, I think all of us are making use of that, and it is certainly going to help the borrowers.
Right. Interesting, yeah. Coming to Arun Kumar, who has an outside oversight of the MFI industry. We have in the past seen crises, events such as the AP crisis, demonetization, etc., where typically the credit losses arising out of the crisis are spread over 2 to 3 years. So first, can we make a similar estimate for COVID-related credit losses also? And next, how much more pain do you think the sector still have? I mean, we're not talking of the regulatory framework, but an estimate of the figures or data points as such.
Yeah, thanks. See, this sector has been showing resilience every time it was hit in the past by any crisis, whether it is AP crisis, whether demon, and all other flood and other such problems. Now, COVID crisis also, if you see the first wave, it was mainly the economic impact which had come out of the lockdown which was announced by the government. So no activity happening, so it came that way, that there was no livelihood happening, which resulted in all these things. And for that, all these government and RBI, they came out with whatever support measures in terms of moratorium, in terms of restructuring, in terms of liquidity support through institutions like ours that went there. This second crisis which has come, which was not expected in the scale it came, and it had both the elements in terms of lockdowns. That is one, but at the same time, this time really people in the hinterland, they got affected by the infection, by the health impact, that also. So all these things, this time it is deeper. So while last year the talk was and the view was that this being a sector where livelihood things are there, and so it would be showing most resilience in terms of coming back. This time question marks were raised and stress is indeed seen. If you see the data which we are seeing on gross level, very frankly speaking, there are some confused signals coming out of that. But at the same time, this is happening because we are aggregating them. But then when we go down deep into analyzing the pockets, then we see a trend. We see some idea we get out of what is happening on ground, which is scattered and is behaving differently. So my sense is, in terms of overall, whatever credit cost we have seen in the past, this sector being a sector which has shown from both the sides, the borrowers as also lenders, a lot of resilience. As Mr. Devesh said, that lenders have a lot of wherewithals to weather this storm. At the same time, for the reason the actual borrowers which they are going to show the resilience because of their livelihood opportunities which are getting lost otherwise. So I see it would not go beyond a limit. If your projection is showing 4.6, although Mr. Devesh feels it's not that high, 5 and plus, I feel it would be around 4 to 5, in between that only. Certainly not going to cross 5 is my guess. But the caveat is third wave, if it comes in a manner which some of the experts had initially forecasted, then it's going to be a deep, deep problem for both lenders as well as the micro borrowers.
Okay, interesting. So you made two interesting points that data is actually scattered and aggregated data could actually give a confusing picture. Whereas one looks at the scattered data and whether in terms of region or profession or something, probably we may have a better understanding. And there is significant resilience in the sector, and a lot of the credit costs have been absorbed. So probably here also we may have a lesson that the credit costs would be, while they would be high, but they would be contained to a certain level. Thank you for that. Now we have seen that the share of MFI lendings by SFBs, most of which were themselves specialized MFI lenders in the past, has been declining over the years. So this question is for Nitin. Does the MFI borrower represent a weaker borrower profile from profitability perspective? What do you think?
I don't think that's a fair assessment of a weaker profile. I mean, they are a different segment, and weaker and stronger is all relative. And there are all kinds of segments. Like infrastructure goes through its own pains. I mean, can we say that infrastructure segment is a weaker profile? Of course not. The salaried profile goes through its own pains at different points in time, but they're also not a weaker. So I think it's contextual to the time series or the event that people go through. But yes, because these are small borrowers and these are borrowers who are dependent on their daily livelihood. I mean, they do not have savings, worth dipping into, and most of the loans that they take also go towards some very basic necessities at times, for healthcare, for education, for improvement of their homes, right? They don't get used for consumption like the affluent would. So obviously they get impacted. And when they get impacted in a cycle like this, yeah, they do appear like as if they are weaker in the current context. But let's say in another context where let's say you could have a stress on the infrastructure or let's say the real estate or any other segment of that kind. I mean, these people will hold up and they won't look like a weak sector. And the point that Mr. Arup Kumar also made that, it is a resilient sector. Devesh also said the same thing. It comes back rather sooner because, they have to research themselves. Otherwise, they don't move up anymore. And the last thing I would say is that it's also a very aspirational category of customers. So they do want to do better in their life. And that is what we've seen over a long period of time, that they do want to move up. They want to have a better life for their children, if not for themselves. And that aspiration keeps them going and making them invest in their businesses or, growing their businesses or whatever other work that they do, help them in, inculcating better banking habits, savings, etc. Because they also want a better life for themselves. And I think this whole point that you made about SFBs once being MFIs and the share of SFBs in microfinance coming down, yeah, data of course suggests that. But I think there are more players now in the MFI NBFC category. That is number one. Plus the SFBs, of course, have also not just grown the MFI portfolio, but also diversified into other lines of businesses, because all of us are now catering to an underserved category of customers, and they don't only belong to the microfinance. They belong to all other kinds of, the lower income groups, and they are not necessarily microfinance in the group lending model. They could be small businessmen on the micro and small enterprises side. They could be very well affordable housing customers. They could be two-wheeler loan customers. So as we are trying to serve more of the underserved and unserved, microfinance is a part of our portfolio, though not the only portfolio that we used to have when we were MFIs.
Okay, great. So I think you are describing SFB to be something in line with what Arup Kumar has been piloting as the credit plus approach. So it's beyond microcredit approach sort of a thing, as still serving the lowest level of the weakest category of the economic strata, which has diversified in terms of needs and increased in terms of the reach of the client to borrow, etc. So, correct. Coming to Devesh, the last 17 months of COVID-related disturbance has impacted the weaker section of the society, with many people having permanent loss of income and being deeply impacted financially. So do you think there is a need for greater government intervention or regulatory forbearance, especially when we have the risk of third wave being discussed?
No, I think, Sanjay, I must, appreciate the current regime. They have been very, very proactive. If you look at, so I will first talk about the regulator. If you look at the last commentary of the last 1 year and the number of times he has used microfinance. So I have the list of all the initiatives starting from April 17 to 2020, TLTRO 2.0, then PCGS, which was modified, the special liquidity window through NABARD, special liquidity window 1 through SIDBI, special liquidity window 2 through NABARD. So I think they have and the current, which is the credit guarantee scheme, because we reached out that it has to be even given for lending. So they have been very, very open and listening to the sector, understand that the sector is very critical. It is now the second largest sector after mortgages. So I think the government, the regulator is taking all the steps. The last time, this moratorium was given. If Nitin will agree with me, all the bankers and including all the lenders were against moratorium this time. So we cannot complain that regulator has not. So we were actually, when the last time moratorium was announced, if you remember, I remember reading about the doomsday of the microfinance, that now the moratorium has been announced, no touch with the client, everything is lost. But you know what happened in March 21? We were still talking about resilience and coming back. So I think government has done enough this time. This was a joint request from everyone, including IBA, us, FIDC, that please do not give a blanket moratorium, because this vitiates the culture. But give us something else, some other instrument which has been given in the form of Resolution 2.0. If you look at the Resolution 2.0, Sanjay, it is very flexible. If you look at compared to the Resolution 1.0, sorry, it is very flexible. That time has been given till September. Last time, it came late, and then you had very little time. So all that the government has done. I don't think the government has to do, could have done more. I don't agree. I think they have been very proactive. And now even the new discussion paper has also come at the very right time. So I don't think, I think it's just a matter of time. We have to slightly show more patience with the client. We have the instruments. Things will improve. And yes, this is a we have to understand that the impact is too much. The issues, the magnitude of the issues too big. You will have some losses. You will have some credit costs. I think people have accepted it, and people will move forward by having more liquidity, raising capital, maintaining good provisioning.
A very interesting point, especially coming from the head of the industry body, to say that government has done enough and no more is practically needed. So I think no more is in terms of the very last step. Probably small steps still need to be taken here and there. And the other interesting perspective is that this is the second largest industry after the mortgage finance. So interestingly, one is 100% secured with probably an LTV of 0.7, 0.6, and the other is totally unsecured. And again, mortgage is reaching out to slightly more affluent, if not fully affluent, whereas this reaches practically the bottom of the pyramid. I mean, there's nothing below it. So, but still, we have been able to grow the industry to the size where it has grown. So, very interesting perspective, Devesh. And now we come to Arup. At times of event risk, many of the NBFC MFIs, especially the mid and small ones, get limited access to funds. So how do you think this issue can be addressed?
Yeah, very valid question. See, as per Sadhan, there are 222 MFIs, both NBFC MFI and normal MFIs. MFIN has mainly NBFC MFIs as its member. So, but then in both the spaces, there are smaller ones, the middle ones. And last year also, we, along with regulator and government, we were discussing this, that how do we take care of the resource requirement of the smaller and medium ones. Last year, not much could be done. But at the same time, this year, I am glad to inform you that some of the things which has happened from RBI SLS2 this time has come to SIDBI for 15,000 crore for all, not only for MFI, for NBFC banks. Then SLF3 also has come additionally 16,000 crore. So through innovative products, we have been in discussion with the regulator to take care of this segment, the smaller and middle one. And through innovative products, this is what we have decided that we should be doing something. And so we are going for double intermediation in terms of larger ones. If they take care of some of the larger ones, I hope you are aware of that. They are already lending small ticket loans to the smaller NBFCs or MFIs. So to them, we are trying to provide additional support, additional resources so that that can flow through them. Those who are not doing this, we are trying to encourage them by offering better terms so that they do to some extent, at least to start with. Then we are also getting into some pooled loan issuances where some intermediary is there, which is giving some support, some guarantee. And through them, we are able to, because they are otherwise not eligible for institutional funding as per present norms. And you understand, wherever money is coming from, the credit risk is borne by the lender only. Even institutions like SIDBI, it's our book lending, which is there, and the risk to book is there. So we are trying to ring fence those things to the extent possible, at the same time take care of the smaller ones, the middle one. We are also trying to experiment the AIF model, where the smaller and the middle ones, they are able to raise their NCDs. We subscribe as senior lender. Some junior lender, class B also investor comes, and we go there as class A investor. While the money would flow is one thing, but at the same time, we are also trying to defend the bond market so that while the bigger ones, they don't have any problem in resource raising, the smaller ones, the middle ones, their bonds, maybe they are not going to get listed, but then there are secondary platforms available where they can be placed for others to show interest and try to build some market for that. So we are trying to do that market making job also. So all of us, Government of India, RBI and SIDBI, we are trying to address the needs of this segment. This is one part of it. At the same time, we are also trying to give other credit plus what we said. This is what we are trying to do so that their capacity is improved, capacity building happens, their elevation to better rated category MFI or NBFC, that happens, and they get into normal fold of other banks also. We are also trying to experiment in terms of better risk mitigation models being incorporated in the underwriting, where on the basis of such underwriting done, other banks and other lenders also join. All these things are on the card, and some of them are already in the advanced stage. Very shortly, they are going to be used to extend resource support to the smaller and middle one, which is very, very critical, not only for the sustenance of these entities, but as also for the micro borrowers who are taking loans from these types of entities, the smaller and the middle ones. So I'm sure this year we are going to see many such initiatives which will take care of this problem.
Okay, interesting approaches. I think many of them are very novel in the whole thought process, while some of them have been there for last 1 to 2 years in terms of larger MFIs and NBFCs reaching out to the smaller ones. But AIF, etc., I think more novel in the approach. And probably as they develop, probably we may see a very large sort of opportunity out there in terms of fundraising and fund deployment. And interestingly, you also had a specialized body known as SIDBI Foundation of Microcredit. So can you help us understand the concept and the body?
Yeah, this SIDBI Foundation of Microcredit, SFMC, this got set up in 1999. SIDBI thought that there has to be a separate foundation. I hope the audience is aware of that. The fact that SIDBI is spearheaded in a big way this setting up of MFIs, and then help in creating the ecosystem, helping the orderly growth of the sector. The concept of MFI, which was not there in late 90s, mid 90s, we started working on that. SIDBI Foundation for Microcredit was set up then, and that has undertaken so many initiatives towards not only supporting the microfinance institutions in coming into being in existence, as also providing all the additional support besides the resource support. Now, this is what in present era we are trying to take it to different level. Microfinance, as Mr. Nitin said, he is taking care of now through SFB more offerings to the underserved and unserved, which is not just microfinance. So microfinance, as we know and as we see, average ticket size of 35,000 rupees loan to a micro borrower. This segment is just 2.6 lakh crore is today there, and MFI is they are holding around 87-90,000 crore in that. But there is another segment which is we call Prayas. We are running our Prayas program under that. That is commonly known as missing middle segment, where the individual loans requirement for micro enterprise setting or expansion up to we have taken as 5 lakh. That segment basically is very vulnerable, very risk prone for the very fact that they are no more group loans. They are individual loans. And they are the people who are, as Mr. Nitin said, aspirational. Their aspiration is beyond livelihood. Their aspiration is to work up the ladder of entrepreneurship. So that is micro enterprise finance, which is one level up than microfinance. And that is the segment we are trying to cater to through this program, our foundation, City Foundation for Microcredit. While we will continue our engagement with all the MFIs and the ecosystem players, and we'll continue contributing to all these ecosystem players with SROs like Amphin and Sadhan. We are now taking this as another area where we want to make it big in terms of micro enterprise finance, where we are trying to develop ecosystem through partnership model, and we are trying to develop some technical products also, risk mitigation tools also, non-GST scoring model also, which will take care of all these things, and we are able to reach out to those who have aspirations to have individual enterprise in this segment. One small area also we will try to cover through SFMC is now some of them have started saying as nano finance. Earlier 5,000, 10,000 was the microfinance. Today, microfinance is not less than 20, 25,000 generally. So there is still a segment which is basically graduating from NTC to NTB. That is a graduation happening. So the segment is there which would need loan in 5,000 to 10,000. That nano finance also is an area where SFMC would like to work on. So one is nano finance, second is microfinance, which we have been working for the last 20 years plus, and we would continue engaging with all the things, all the entities in the ecosystem. Then micro enterprise finance through Prayas partnership model. So this is what we are trying to do, apart from whatever additional support needed with Amphin, with Sadhan. We would continue working in terms of having orderly growth, in terms of having MFR rating, in terms of having code of conduct assessment done, harmonized COCA tool, all these things which we are working together, we'll continue working on that.
Okay, very interesting. So Devesh, as head of Amphin, is there any solution to damage caused by state level intervention like the way we have seen in Assam recently?
No, Sanjay, if you, yeah, I think this is a one risk which is there. I think there are 2-3 things which can happen. One is that this Andhra Pradesh case is still in the court, and I think if that ruling comes out in the favor of, and it should come out in our favor, because we have a very strong case. It's been now close to 11 years we're fighting this case. If that happens, we'll send a very strong signal. That is one. Second is in the new discussion paper and what we have as AmFin, we have represented our views. I think one of the things which we have represented is the fact that please mention very clearly that how MFI is not part of the state money lending or any other jurisdiction. It is clearly under the jurisdiction of the RBI. Third is that if you see, though you have talked about, many people have talked about in the news, talked about Assam, but let me just share with you, for the comfort of many people who are not aware, that Assam, if you see, the issue started with waiver, and where it is now, it is coming to relief, and also the government is ready to bear the cost of that relief. So if you see, compare this with Andhra, I think this is taking a very different turn. It should, I'm hoping, I'll say with all the disclaimer that nothing, there are a lot of slips between the cup and the lip, but I'm saying that it should have a positive outcome if you compare last time, and it is happening because of the one as an industry, we are together, whether it is SFBs or MFI, NBFC MFI or MFI, I think we all have been together. And second is the fact that as I mentioned, we have evolved as a sector, so we know we have a strong advocacy now. And the third, the point is that even we are getting good support from the regulator on this issue. I can only mention this. I can't mention many details here. So I think this should help the cause. If this Andhra case and this resolution of Assam happens in a manner where it is the way it is moving, so I think it will send a right signal that this is a sector and no other state will then like to intervene. Other thing is, I think more of a generic statement I would like to make that there's we call it financial vandalism. I think somewhere this has to stop. I think it's not about microfinance, though it impacts microfinance much, but this can impact any other sector. This has to stop. And somewhere we should have rules that, look, if you cannot have passed such kind of statements that loans are waived and all that. I think that is a much broader, at a societal level issue.
Okay. So yeah, that Andhra resolution, I think, would be a very good relief if it works in the favor as you were talking about. And now my last question is to Nitin, so slightly different topic. So what is your view on use of technology for MFI loans? Do you think that there is a further scope for reduction? There's a scope for further reduction in OPEX with the use of technology?
Yeah, I think technology always brings those opportunities, and I think most of us in the microfinance business already use a lot of technology. Most of the origination is tablet based or handheld devices, and we have digital workflows in most part of the industry. What can be done further is also this whole concept of digital inclusion, because customers and the borrowers who we deal with, we are making an effort to include them financial inclusion. But there can very well be a time in future that they are included financially, but they're excluded digitally, and then they don't have the ways and means to access the financial services with as much ease like many other people would have. So I think the role that we are trying to play now is to also include our beneficiaries, our borrowers, on the digital inclusion side, so that any new technology that you want to use, whether for repayments, like a lot of repayments now come through the BBPS platform for a lot of us. At least in our case, we have a lot of repayments coming through that because customers have started to use these kind of apps. But you need to train customers, you need to work with them. Yeah, the smartphone penetration perhaps is lower than many other segments, but it's not going down, it's only going up. So you have to understand that these customers will need different interfaces. For our own field operations or any other kind of workflows, there is always an opportunity to keep digitizing as much as possible. And I don't see a reason why that will not result into a continuous reduction in operating costs. Maybe initial costs of the investments would be something that everybody will have to take, but there is scope all around. And I think the biggest beneficiary here would be the borrowers, because they get included for a very long term and for the rest of their life. Otherwise, they stand the risk of getting excluded altogether. And we are already discussing at a country level this whole digital divide, that there are some people who have access to technology and can do many things, and there are certain people who don't have access to technology and they cannot do those things. So I think that role has to be played by all the intermediaries to bring everybody into that fold, and then gradually roll out the relevant kind of services and products which are meaningful for them.
Interesting use of the organizations to reach the bottom of the pyramid and include them not just financially but also digitally, so that the whole ecosystem improves. That's a very interesting example. So I think that's the question that we have, but we need to, we already, I think, largely overshot time, but we still need to have some questions from the audience. So over to Mridul to invite questions from the audience, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Dear participants, now we have time for a couple of queries. You are please requested, if you have any query, you are please requested to key in your panel. Thank you.
So till then, we have a question for Devesh that as the chairman of MFIN, what do you think? What has been the role of SRO during the pandemic situation?
One, we have been very mindful. We have been sending various, advisories on how to deal with clients. We have a MFIN toll-free number, and we're looking at what kind of complaints people are giving, and then motivating and members that look, this is a situation where you don't need to create a pressure situation in the field. If you see, I'll give you an example, Sanjay, that when the first moratorium was announced last year, we built a consensus that we will pass on this moratorium completely to the clients, and most of the players passed on that moratorium to the clients. And then other very important constituent is our employees. So how do we just worked out advisory on how do we make sure that we work-life balance, and then there is a pressure on the field officer because of the fact that there are collection issues there. So how we have to be empathetic. If you see, most of the sector has really shown a lot of maturity. I must appreciate all of my colleagues here, co-practitioners, that what they have done in COVID. I don't think we have heard many cases where people have not paid salaries or incentives, or on the other side, people have helped their employees during the COVID when, example, just to take Fusion's example, there was a time when we had 2,000 people who were impacted. But companies have been very proactive. Companies have COVID policy. I've seen COVID policy of many companies, microfinance companies, where including the banks, where they are the vaccination is being given the cost of vaccination, cost of hospitalization. Then most of the companies have health insurances. So I think it has been a very mature response, and I don't think any company has done any knee-jerk reactions, especially if you look at the top 10, 12, 15 companies. I don't think anybody has suddenly a lot of retrenchment of the employees and all that, and that has not happened. I think it is primarily because of the fact that at a SRO level, we have also made sure that we have been sensitizing our members about some of these issues. Because if you remember, Sanjay, during the demonetization, there's some kind of pressure cooker situation got created, and then people saw the elements, local elements took benefit of it. So we have been very sensitive this time, and I hope this continues in the future. And many areas we have done CSR programs, the companies have done CSR programs. So I think it's a very mature, calibrated approach. That's what we have been doing.
So the next question is for Nitin, that as per the recent the RBI consultation paper which has come, they plan to bring all the MFI players at par with the NBFC MFI. So do you think it's a right move, or do you think there should be a differentiated approach?
Well, it's absolutely the right move. I think the whole theme is that the activity has to be regulated rather than the entity, and the activity needs to have a framework where everybody has a level playing field. So in that spirit and context, this is a very, very good thing that RBI has proposed. And I'm sure since the deadline of, I think 15th or 31st of July was the date to submit the views, that is already over. So we should be hearing from RBI, soon enough into what the final guidelines are going to be. But I think it is necessary, because some of the issues that even Devesh was kind of referring to have also happened because of the fact that there are these dissymmetries in the approach to the same business by different entities. So harmonization is always a good idea, especially when you're dealing with borrowers who are reasonably marginalized. From a customer protection point of view, it is an absolutely essential thing. The SROs play a very, very definitive role, but I think regulations also require all the players to be bound in a manner that it's not just voluntary. It is required by regulation that people have a certain framework to adhere to. So it's a very good step from that point of view.
So I think now we already exceeded the time because we were supposed to be there till 5 o'clock. We're already 5:07. I think we'll have to wind up out there. It's very interesting conversation. So while we started with the discussion on the impact of COVID, but a lot of new things have come out. So very interesting observation that this is the second largest financing industry after the mortgages, and it has a lot of government support, and the industry is resilient. So while there's further government intervention in terms of trying to improve the sector, but the industry remains resilient, and we obviously SIDBI and other government agencies are now working on various ways of funding the small and the medium NBFCs and other MFIs in terms of funding them and reaching the funding to them, including costs and the availability of fund. Obviously, credit losses would be there given the magnitude of the events which have happened, but the industry has the capability to wherewithal to withstand that. So probably some weaknesses on profitability, but in terms of the overall balance sheet, I think the weaknesses would be much lower. And also interesting comments on digital inclusion, SRO, and the regulations of RBI. So thank you all gentlemen very much. So Pradul, can you conclude the session, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ravi. And thank you again to all our guest speakers, Mr. Kumar, Mr. Sasdev, and Mr. Chuk, for their insightful views. It was a privilege hosting you, sir. And thank you to all participants for taking the time out and being a part of this CARE Ratings webinar. We hope the discussion was insightful and look forward to your participation in future also. For any further queries, feedback, or suggestion, you are please welcome to write in the comment box, which will be coming no sooner the webinar ends. Thank you and goodbye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nitin, Sanjay, Rudy. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.